Crave was conceived as a way to deliver our strong educational mission and our membership's desire for their continued learning. Through the Crave series, our chapter will deliver webinars and virtual meetings to deliver timely and relevant topics that are affecting our industry today.
It's about the effort that we expend to connect with people. But you have an opportunity to see people, you have an opportunity to chat with people. We may not have an opportunity to have appetizers and share a drink with each other, but we stay connected, and that's really the most important thing.
Being able to work together and learn together in a new format, a new environment, really helped us take those pre-existing relationships and friendships that I had to another level.
CoreNet has taken the leadership in these kinds of conversations for years and years, and so we're delighted to have this long-term relationship with CoreNet.
I found the CoreNet to be a great community of dedicated real estate professionals, and what it means to me is it gives me a wider network of people with whom to share ideas, to derive the best learnings, to test and experiment with things that I'm working on.
This program is all about personal growth and becoming the leader that you want to be.
CoreNet has always led the way when it comes to supporting the professional development of our members. Our roundtable discussions, our education workshops, and our professional development programs are just part of what makes CoreNet so valuable to our members. It was critical for us to find a way to still be able to facilitate all of this. Crave has provided us the platform to be just as effective and to still provide that value to our members in a virtual environment.
CoreNet not only provides a platform for different groups to come together regardless where you come from in terms of organization, but really help each member to feel like they belong in this organization.
We have a diverse membership base, and you will find that members come from all walks of life and from all over the world. However, it's still an area of focus for us to improve upon and to embrace equity, inclusion, and diversity through increasing awareness and taking action, as we know this will lead to more success for the organization and for our members.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the CoreNet workshop today, the Crave series. As you see in the video, we may not be gathering in person, but we are still here together and connecting with each other. My name is Cerise and I work for CBRE. I'm also part of the Real Advantage Committee and co-chairing the EID committee here at CoreNet New England. I'm so happy to have all of you join us this afternoon. We have a great session. And before that, I'm going to share a couple of public service announcements before we get started. So a quick look at our agenda. We'll have Rick, my colleague Rick, that I will introduce shortly to talk about the Techy workplaces that we'll be going to. We'll also be joined with our esteemed panelists for a panel discussion, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. So we'll expect this session to be interactive and make sure that you can actively participate through our Q&A function as well. Again, the Q&A function, if you're new to the Zoom webinar, at the bottom left here next to the participants list, you have the Q&A button where you can submit that and we'll answer that as the time comes for the Q&A. But feel free to submit that as you hear more content and you have questions. Most exciting event of the year. We didn't have one last year. This year we'll have our annual golf tournament, October 6th, 2021. We know that tickets are going out really fast, so make sure that contact CoreNet. There's a link on your weekly newsletter to sign up. So please do so, and we look forward to see you there. Also, we're on social media. So from Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn is especially great because we have a members only group page where we share all the latest and greatest news. So please, you can scan this from your phone and you can follow us and follow our journey. All of this event is not possible without the support of our corporate partners and sponsors. So we want to thank our corporate partners, our gold sponsors, our platinum sponsors, our gold and silver sponsors. We really appreciate your support in making all of our events possible. So with that, we will get started to our content. So today, the context of technology has been a #1 priority as everyone is planning for the eventual return to the office. We are hoping all of us will return at least in 2022. So I think there's a lot of planning that are underway as we expect the eventual return. So today I want to introduce Rick Mullins from CBRE Site Ready. Rick is the Senior Director leading Workplace Technology Strategy and Design team at CBRE Site Ready, where he is responsible for providing advisory services in CBRE Site Ready's Workplace Technology Consulting practice. He's working with companies' leadership teams to continually enhance existing technology delivery process and developing new solution offerings for clients. Rick has over 30 years of experience in the world of portfolio, program, project, and process management, spanning multiple industries and multiple leadership roles. With over 230 real estate projects under his belt, covering close to 6 million square feet of commercial office space over 7 years, Rick has incredibly proven that an integrated delivery model best advocates for clients' office technology infrastructure needs by threading those requirements throughout the entire real estate project lifecycle. Welcome, Rick, to CBRE, and thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cerise. I really appreciate it. Excited to be here. We're going to jump right in because I'm going to make sure we have time for my colleagues, Ashley and Tracy, at the end to get into some discussion as well as some question and answer time. So let me share my screen and we'll move forward with presentation. There we go. So we're talking about the hybrid workforce, a hybrid workplace, just a hybrid environment. This is new, kind of, sort of. But what we want to do today is look at the technology that's involved in that. We're going to be returning to the office. It's going to be different. It's going to look different. And technology, as it has in the past, played a big part, is even going to be more intricate in being successful in this new environment. If you look at the statistics, we'll have a little fun with statistics here. They're all over the place, depending on how the question was asked, when it was asked, who was asked. The numbers kind of span the gamut. But the reality is there have been some key pieces of information that we've gotten from all of these surveys that have been consistent. And they are these right here in front of us. We've got folks who want to continue to be remote. We've got others who want to have a mix of that. And we have others who say, I got to have an office to go to. And even some were so adamant about that flexibility that if they didn't have that opportunity, they'd go find someplace else to work. One of the aspects of that they're holding on to is that there are a lot of benefits in this. There's money savings, there's time savings, there's actually potential for greater income. I'm not sure how they measured this, but people are happier. And then there's this piece where, because I'm remote, I actually have a lot more focus or opportunity to put time in, and a greater portion of the remote people are putting in over 40 hours than are in the office. So it's an impact. It's an impact to the worker, it's an impact to the employer, and it's here to stay. It is the new norm. But here's the challenge we have. We have multiple workplaces, whether that's home or Starbucks or the office, but we have a single workforce. So accommodating that has to be a challenge. There has to be a strategy, and it can't just be the topic of today, which is technology. It has to be a holistic approach, because as most of you have experienced, you don't just buy technology and deploy it without thinking about other aspects of the office, of the worker, of our culture, of our policies. All of those things need to be taken into account, and they all need to be addressed as we look at this workplace technology in a hybrid environment. So let's just jump in and look at the worker and what that means. So the worker says this on all those surveys: they feel more productive. They feel like there's less stress from the work environment. About 40% have said we figured out a way to be more productive and to boost productivity by having a schedule and making sure we get those naps in. That's nobody I know particular, but I have felt that way at times. And then there's also that piece that we need to be aware of where there's a loneliness isolation factor. And so the office is going to play a big part in not only doing the productive work, but in that colleague collaboration, that social aspect. Beyond how they feel about the work, it's the benefits in addition to that. Meetings are easier to get to with less effort. I can go to those meetings from just about anywhere I want to. I have the time and flexibility as a hybrid remote worker to do things that I couldn't do if I was just sitting in the office. And so the worker is one of the things that's driving this. The worker has to work, which takes us to the topic of today's discussion, which is the technology. So this is basics. These are basics. We got to have computer, we got to have connectivity, not only to the internet, but to our office. And then we've got to have some form of communicating. Is it Outlook? Is it Google? Got to have a place to work. And then, as we've all learned in our home environment, I don't have enough outlets. How many times have we said that at the office, and then we get home and now we're saying the same thing? But what has happened in the last 18, 24 months is the sophistication of the technology tools for the home or remote worker has grown. I don't just want those things above. I want other things that make my work easier, faster, more efficient. And so we've seen a growth in that toolbox that when we bring these folks back to the office, there is the expectation, and I'll even go so far as to say the need to accommodate those tools so they can remain as productive and valuable as they were in the remote space. Now, there are some who have kind of gone to a degree that maybe we can't accommodate everything that they're doing, but we can accommodate most of it. By the way, I have to draw attention to the picture in the middle. There's actually a baby in that backpack while the guy's riding his bike. So they're going on a virtual bike ride. But anyway, I don't want to digress. So this takes us to, okay, that's the workforce at home. That's the workplace at home. That's the technology at home. What does that mean for the office? Well, we've got those workstations that we all had. They're going to be different. They're going to mature. They're going to evolve. And they're going to evolve in such a way that they're accommodating the experience that the remote worker has had at home all these months. And that means that we're going to have to go in and look at what type of furniture we have. Is it stand sit desk? Do we have an extender of the desk? So they're used to standing up and making sure that their back or their legs or their whole body is in good shape and they're being active or they're moving and they don't create back pains and such. And then we're going to the space, we're going back to a place where everybody is needing an extended monitor, maybe two, and depending on the group you're in, the line of service, it might be more than that. So we've got extra monitors, we've got laptops, we've got connectivity. What about keyless? What about the mouse? What about the power? Because it's not their home anymore, it's the office. Do we have enough outlets? Do we have enough? By the way, we have to look at OSHA requirements because we all know you can't really put a power strip on a power strip. But those are the things we have to address to make sure not only do we have a safe environment, but do we have an effective one? Can we be connected both externally and within the network? Is our network infrastructure capable of handling all the additional equipment? And then moving about with this mobility, we're going to have all kinds of open space in and out of the floors and in and out of the workspace. We don't want anybody dropping their connection or their video that they might be having on their phone. And speaking of phones, by the way, the cell signal has become a big thing. It's just ubiquitously across all businesses. For those of you who have been around in that space, you know that the street signal doesn't get above the 10th floor. If you've got offices or clients or you've got tenants who are above that floor, there's got to be a solution for boosting that signal so that smartphone remains a vital part of the worker tool set. But the other things we have to keep in mind is the environment. We've got meetings that are going to be taking place lots of places. We've got screens that are growing in number. We've got people who are moving around having conversations on cell phones. So we've got to look at things like interior lighting, lighting from the outside, airflow, the whole HVAC zoning is going to be changing now. And then of course, we've got to manage that sound. How do we go about doing that? Is it with panels? Is it with electronics? So those things really have to be taken into account when we look at the workstation, in addition to not just the workstation, but other workplaces. I've heard it said, and I actually read an article yesterday that said the open workplace is dead. I'm going to disagree with that. And I know we're being recorded, but I'm going to say that. I don't believe that's the case. I believe the open workspace is going to evolve and mature to something that's needed in this post-pandemic environment. And so it's going to be getting more use. It's going to have more strategic placement and design as a part of it. But when we use those spaces, when we create those spaces, we realize also they're going to take up more of our square footage. And then we're back to the noise management aspect. And are people walking all around and through my meetings? Can I find a quiet spot somewhere? And then of course, the movement, the constant connectivity. I don't want to drop my cell signal. I don't want to drop my laptop connectivity. And then that outdoor open flow space somehow has to be appropriately integrated into the rest of the design. And so the technology gives us greater access and mobility, but it also impacts the overall environment. And then of course, everybody wants to talk about what do the meeting spaces look like? Well, this is where the evolution is really going to boost. It's going to change. It's going to become things that some have been practicing, some have been pushing, but now we're all going to begin to experience. We had a 10-room, a 12-room conference room in the past that could seat obviously 12, or in some cases, we all know about 18 people if we crammed them all in. That's not going to be happening. So I have this square foot wall that's closed in. I now can only get 4 people in there. So I'm lower capacity in the same square foot, but I need more meeting space. So I'm going to increase the number of meeting locations, which means meeting spaces take up a larger footprint. And so we have to decide, what are we moving into? Our offices, workstations, open space? But here's the thing with meetings as well. If we got all this open space and we've got this open environment, we've got workstations that are touchdown space, we've got the noise issue. We've got people walking around and making noises. Is the meeting space next to the cafeteria? Is it next to the elevator? And then some meetings require privacy. How do we go about establishing that? How do we do that? And how do we designate those rooms for that? But here's what I believe we're going to see when we start going back to the office. We're going to register to go in. Some of us are already doing this. You have this experience. So I'm going to go to the office tomorrow. I'm going to call up my app on my phone through work, and I'm going to see that I'm going to register. I'm going to go into the first floor, and I want to sit. And some of these actually let you pick a desk and or a meeting room. And so I register. I'm going to go in tomorrow. I'm going to go to the first floor, and then I go in tomorrow. And so I can call up this phone app and it'll tell me, hey, you're going to the first floor. It's only 62% occupied based on social distancing standards. I get to the office, there's going to be some type of medical assessment or health assessment that I'm going to have to go through before I go into the office. When I finally get into the office, I'll have all kinds of signage and indicators that say, yes, it's still 62% capacity. It's good to go up there. There are going to be maybe some capabilities for alarms. If something might happen, it's going to be maybe tied into the fire and safety system. But then when I get on that floor, I'm going to begin to see that my employer or my building owner is caring for the environment as well. They'll be monitoring the air. They'll be monitoring traffic flow. They'll be monitoring occupancy. And there are also going to be the opportunity, we've deployed these in a couple of places where you can put counters, people counters going in and out of restrooms. Don't freak out yet. It's not following you in, but it tells the facilities how many times people have gone in and out. And there can be an automated message that goes out after, let's say, the 35th person. An automated email goes out and says, this the bathroom needs to be clean for keeping things sanitary in this post-pandemic space. And so you'll be able to see some sort of a banner or an iPad or a reader on the wall by the bathroom that says, this bathroom was cleaned at 1:57. and you'll know exactly when it was done, and you'll be assured that it's been cleaned. And so that sanitation aspect is a big piece of what we're going to be seeing going into the new workspace. But when we're in the new workspace, we've got all kinds of tools that are going to begin to flow out. I can get real-time occupancy when I go to a floor or want to go to a floor. I can use my cell phone for finding my way around if I'm from out of town in an office that it's not my typical office, or I've gone to campus setting. I can use that just like I do my GPS in my car. I'm going to schedule rooms. I'm going to schedule workspaces so I can make sure that I've got the space secured. I know the number of people. I know how many people I'm going to have in there, and so on. But we're going to only be able to do this with sensors and occupancy utilization sensors. So we've got people counters, or what they're called threshold sensors. When people walk in and out of the door, it keeps an active real-time count of who's in that space. We've got monitors that are going to be at the desk, and these are things that people are a little unnerved about. But we're going to see this coming, and it's going to be for the health of the staff. It's going to be for the well-being of the company as a whole, but it's also for greater utilization of the space at hand. And then what we refer to typically as security cameras, they're now being called computer vision because they're being tied to data capture. In addition to that, we've got to somehow have this contact tracing capability. If I go into the office on Tuesday and on Wednesday we hear that Steve tested positive for COVID, I don't know who Steve is, they'll have the ability to go back and see, was I on the same floor with Steve? Was I in a meeting with Steve? And I'll get a notification saying, hey, you were on this floor, Steve tested positive, you might want to go make sure you're okay. So these types of things are going to become common. In order to have that flexibility, that movement, we've got to take care of that connectivity. And we've already mentioned the cell signal boosters, it's called the DAS system, distributed antenna system, and then the access points, the net Wi-Fi access points, the saturation aspect of that is going to increase so that we never drop connectivity. And most people will be running from a wireless connection, and we'll be removing a lot of the cable connections to the workstations. The sound masking aspect is going to grow because of this open space, because of this movement. And even now they've come out with the ability for those sound masking systems to auto hear the noise levels and self-adjust depending on the noise around there. If we're going to move out to the deck and to the patio, we still got to have connectivity. So there are decisions that have to be made on how am I going to do that? What tool am I going to use? Where is it going to be placed? What will the building allow me to do? Does it require conduit? Those types of things. And then we've mentioned several times the power. It's going to be built into our space, our furniture, our cafes, and even the USB like we see in the airport, where they're just a docking station for charging up quickly. This is going to become very, very common because the hybrid worker is just that, in and out and mobile constantly. So now let's get to the meeting space. That's what we're all excited about. Everyone wants to talk about what's the audio visual look like. Well, we don't really know because it's continuing to evolve so quickly. But what we can say is that we're going to have all kinds of displays that serve multiple purposes, and they're going to be everywhere. Every place we can put something where there can be a quick meeting, there's going to be a display of some kind if it makes sense in the space. Digital whiteboards are now going to be growing and evolving, and they have matured over the last 18 months, by the way, and their connectivity into this meeting space is going to be vital. Tracking cameras and microphones, tracking the voice, tracking the speaker. I think one of the simplest examples of that is this amazing technology. By the way, I'm not promoting this. I just think they've got this, and there are others who are doing this as well. You see the AlPro meeting tool here, the device. It's a great example of what we're going to see in the meeting space. It's going to bring down the complexity of these solutions as well as the cost, and allow a lot of mobility and movement in as well as configurability in our space now. Mobile carts have been around for a while, but their maturity and simplicity is growing, as well as integrating other types of technologies within them. Some of them are actually the interactive displays, as well as video cameras, as well as presentation screens. And then this picture at the bottom, the tabletop computing is the furniture. We're not necessarily now going to be buying a table and then putting something on it. It actually is the technology. And so these are going to be placed in those rooms that might be war rooms or situation rooms or executive rooms where it truly is an engaged in audience, and they need all that computer ability in the entire room. And then I think is one of the most fascinating things is what I've seen called a video conversation robot. Maybe it's just you and me. Maybe we're just walking down the hall to craft an email before we go into this meeting. You're virtual and I'm here. I can actually walk with you down the hallway, and this will follow me as I go. And we're having an open conversation, the hallway conversation. Those are going to be made available and possible through robotic conversation or video conversation robots. And then, of course, the overall space of videos and seating changes and such is going to also bring us into this space of where the Infinity screens have matured. They are simpler to use. The cost is beginning to come down. For those of you who don't know, Infinity screen is I can zoom in, zoom out to the nth degree. And so I can keep all my data in a file and call up the file on the screen, and everything is there. I think we're going to see those grow. The interactive whiteboards with video conferencing rooms where we can annotate on both sides or any side of the presentation audience are going to be a big part in getting folks engaged and being a part of the collaborative aspect of meetings. And yes, they're finally here. This is a real picture of a real holographic table. And so these are going to begin to move into our space. And we have to take into account lighting and airflow and noise when we start moving these into our world. But we also have the ability now to do LAN broadcasting. I can broadcast internally to my own company's network with the technology I have. I don't have to go buy another service. The technology we can deploy can allow me to broadcast from the boardroom to 7, 8, 10, 12 other rooms within the office. So everyone doesn't have to be sitting at their individual desk, eating up bandwidth, watching this on their laptops. But then let's look ahead. What's coming? AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, it's here. It's going to be a part of our meeting space. It actually already is, but I wouldn't call it production ready yet. So that's why I put it on this slide. And then guess what? We get to pick our avatar. We don't have legs, obviously, you can see here, but we get to pick who we are in a meeting. And we're going to have an entire meeting where we're all avatared together, pointing at screens and talking. But what I think is one of the most amazing things is the holographic, the maturity and growth of the holographics technology. It has made leaps and bounds movement where even to the point where I can shake your hand and feel your hand while I'm shaking it. And then take all of that and you put it together and we can have virtual meetings literally anywhere with folks from anywhere across the globe. And we don't need a display because we've got three-dimensional interaction, and it's going to really open up that collaborative aspect. But the technology has to be supportable within the environment. So we're going to have to look at the wireless again, the power, the lighting, the spacing, the noises, and so on. So when we talk about technology, it's really not just about the technology, it's about integrating that technology into the design and strategy. And then we get into what we really are going to be interested to see unfold here, and that's this artificial intelligence, machine learning. I'm going ahead and call them concierge. So we know about Alexa, we know about Google, but now they're taking on their own personalities, interacting with us, learning who we are, actually joking with us. Or you could have an avatar with a picture and they're the ones who pop up on your phone and remind you, you have a meeting, you have a doctor's appointment. Oh, don't forget to submit that report. And then the robotics, here they come, they will be there. I've actually seen the security robot down in the Fort Worth train station, and it just wanders around, but it's tied to the police station and all of its reporting, and it's going to have this interactive piece. It's going to have this flow. It's going to be part of what we're doing, and all the design, all the strategies, all the technology, all the connectivity has to take into account all of these things we're going to be seeing, which I believe even this page, within less than 18 months, I'm thinking probably within 12, you're going to see a lot of this becoming very, very common in the workplace. But here's the thing. If I can't get data out of it, I'm not sure I want to invest in it, because data is gold. And we've heard that for years, but it is true. The gold market in data has exploded. Anything I put my money into and put in my workplace, I want to get information out of it. I want to know, is the room being used? What's the traffic flow? Is it consistent with what I thought it was going to be? How is the use of rooms tied to the temperature of those rooms, and so on? It's data, data, data. And so all of these things, when we talk about technology, are a holistic, strategic conversation. And it's not about what product is best, it's about what production you're looking for, what solutions you need for not only the short term, but the long term. So that's a quick introduction to the technologies we potentially are going to be seeing in the coming months, and actually are seeing. But I want to take that opportunity to segue from the technology specific into the panel discussion. And I want to introduce you to our panelists today. These are two folks that I know very well and have the greatest level of respect for, and have actually worked with them quite a bit. Tracy Neff is the Operations Director of the Americas for Unispace. Sorry, Trace. Okay. Ashley Dunn is an Associate Principal, and she's the Director of Workplace for Dyer Brown, an architectural firm. I'm going to just not waste our time with me introducing them. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and a little bit about who they are, and then we'll get into our questions. Ashley, why don't you go first?
Sure. Thanks. Hi, everybody. So as Rick said, I'm the Director of Workplace, and really my role in this panel is to talk about all the things Rick just discussed, right, which are all interesting and fascinating, and how those integrate with your actual physical workplace from a design perspective, right? So let's talk about there, and that's kind of my focus and my area of expertise. Tracy?
Hi, and so I met Rick and Ashley when I was Director of Design and Construction at PwC. I was there for several years. And about 2 years ago, I moved over to Unispace, and Unispace is a global design build firm, which seemed like a perfect fit for me because it had the design and the construction, the two things I love. And you know, as Ashley mentioned, and just listening to Rick, your mind should be spinning, because technology is core to how you lay out your space, how you pick your furniture, how you budget, the building you pick. So, you know, we'll talk about that more, but it's really part of workplace strategy now, is your technology that you're going to have in your office and for your folks at home.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. It absolutely is. And I think that that's a good segue into the first question. Actually, I'm going to direct this at you initially. You know, we're seeing our clients trying to design and move into the office, trying to get ready for that. But because they've not been there yet, we don't really know what that design, that workable design is. How do you go about helping a client design this space while we're still learning what an office really ought to look like, both from technology as well as just strategic layout?
Yeah, it's tough, right? You know, we talk a lot. I think the key to that question is really flexibility, right? And flexibility on a lot of different fronts. And I will admit that architects and designers are guilty of this as well, where we really want to design things kind of down to the tiniest increment. And I think in the moment we're living in, we have to let that go a little bit, right? So we have to say things like, we're going to design this meeting room and we're going to allow it to be more flexible for future technology. And that can look like something as simple as not building the display into the wall so it can be smaller or bigger, or you can add things to it. It can look like something where you lay your workstations out, but you take some clusters out day one, put in some collaboration areas, and plan the power and the infrastructure to put those workstations in if it turns out that that's what people use. So as you were talking about, Rick, that data is going to be really important. And so what you have to do is you have to make some plans that are flexible, let folks come back to the space, gather that data and iterate, right? So we've been saying it, you know, to our clients pre-pandemic, but I think it's even more important now, this idea of holding some of your budget back for day two, right? So knowing that when folks move in the very first day, or when you really start to see people come back to the office in a more substantial way, it's not going to be set it and forget it, right? You're going to have to let people move in and have some some money and some flexibility set aside to come back in 6 months and say, wow, this is fascinating how people are actually using these rooms slightly differently than we expected. This is the type of space that really has more demand. How can we come back in without having to retrofit the entire space and make little tweaks that can really support the way your people are truly working, right?
Right. That's awesome. I think it's a great point. Trace, will you have any other comments on that before we move to the next question? I know this is a space you live in as well.
I mean, I just want to say, Rick, you trained me well. That with any client that comes to us and they're, they want to envision their new workplace, the first thing we ask is, who's your technology partner? Because it is so entrenched from like the second. I mean, let's go back to the building they pick. And so, you should have your technology partner involved with building selection. You should have your technology person reviewing the lease. You should have them be part of the whole design process. The furniture. I mean, I just can't stress how important it is that the technology partner, or you bring one as part of your project team, is there from the absolute beginning with every single step. As you just saw what Rick said, the tech's going to be everywhere. And so if your design doesn't incorporate it, or at least future-proof it to incorporate it, then you're going to be way behind the 8 ball when you want to put some tech in and you've already designed and laid out your space and possibly even built it.
Yeah, and of course I'm biased. I absolutely agree with that. But that upfront connectivity and planning from not just the space, but the technology, that holistic mentality, I absolutely agree. So, and I love your point, Ashley, about holding back some budget. Determining how much that is a personal client decision, but yeah, it's definitely going to be some things that are dynamic moving forward. So this is actually for both of you, but Tracy, I'll let you respond first. How do you anticipate this hybrid workforce to impact like the broader employee experience? And I know you're not HR, neither one of us, none of us are, but we do think about the design of space as it relates to how it's used and how what the work culture is like. So how does that hybrid approach impact the whole audience when you think about the space you live in?
Very big question. So, I mean, Unispace, put out a paper, we called it the propeller model. A lot of companies have, their different versions of hybrid, but I read somewhere it used to be bring your own device, and now it's evolved to bring your own environment. So, people will be working from wherever, but when they do come into the workspace, they're going to probably want to be in a certain type of environment based on what they're doing that day. And so we are working to have those different types of environments available within the workplace that we're designed for our client, or the ability to change something into that environment that's needed for the day. So as you mentioned, HR is a big part of it, figuring out who's coming in, when they're coming in, do different teams come in at the same time. So a lot of discussions are happening at HR, the line of business leaders, the programming, to try to determine how many different types of spaces do they need. And if they can't get a lot of square footage, how do we, as Ashley mentioned, spaces have to double duty, triple duty to be efficient for the client, but allow the people the type of environment that they need for the workers that are coming in.
Yeah. So Ashley, from your perspective, I agree. I think there's a lot that has to be considered. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I think you're totally right, Tracy. The HR part of it, the change management, helping people understand how they behave in these new spaces. The other part of it that really, in my mind, is really about the user's experience. If you have a lot of employees who are only coming in maybe 1 or 2 days a week, you want that experience to be so positive, right? You want them to want to come back and see one another. And so what can you do to lower those barriers? And that might look, if let's say you're reducing your square footage, it might look like reallocating some of those dollars that you would have spent on build out or rent and allocating them to operations, right? So concierge services, having someone come in and reset spaces at the end of the day, making sure that all the desks have a universal docking station and it's been reset, it's been fixed. So the employee doesn't come in and say, oh, it's such a hassle. The booking software doesn't really work. We've kind of cobbled it together, right? I come into the office and they tell me my desk is going to be ready, but it's not. It's missing the tools that I need, or I can't find supplies that I need, or the wayfinding is poor, and so I don't know which room to go to. That's the ultimate failure, right? You want an employee to come in and have a high-end hotel experience. It wants to feel completely seamless. Everything is right where they need it, when they need it. And that takes investment, right? And takes investment on the operational side. And it also takes investment and careful design of the physical environment to support that concierge level of service.
Yeah, I love the concept of the concierge too, because it means that someone is thinking intentionally about the employee workforce. And I think that's something that has to be taken into account. One of the things I'm going to step in here and say, I think one of the things that clients are going to have to really be aware of is having the two different teams mindset. Well, I work in the office all the time, and this is my desk, and we don't need our space to be, touchdown space. We don't need our space to look like those hybrid people's spaces. I want to leave my desk just like it is. If you're going to make the transition, it has to be a holistic, complete transition across the board where everybody truly does have the same workstation type, space, connectivity, because that could potentially create two sides of a team because of just the type of workspace I'm at, because I'm in the house and you're a hybrid and you only come here once in a while. So there's some real challenges in that, but certainly can be taken care of, like both of you said, from a designing perspective. Tracy, let me ask you a question when it comes to like technology. I know the technology isn't your space necessarily, but like you said earlier, it has to be a part of the design, the office, the production environment. How do you remain flexible and adaptable now when we really don't know, as Ashley was saying earlier, we don't know what it's going to finally look like? How would you stay flexible when it comes to technology? And I'm not asking you to, talk to me about the technology, MDF room and the switches and so on, but I mean from the integrated production type, end user type technologies. What have you seen? What have you been talking to your clients about in that space?
So I'm going to use a good example from our past life, and that, we wanted to roll out room reservation systems, but we were still piloting them. We still weren't able to pick our final product, but we had offices going up, and we didn't want to miss the opportunity to have the room reservation kiosks and the software in the new build, but we hadn't picked what we wanted yet. So, we worked with the IT and AV team, and we made sure we had the power, the low voltage cable. We found creative ways how to work it into, our glass front walls. And so we kind of future-proofed all of the conference rooms so that when we finally did pick which room reservation system we're going to use, we could easily go install them and put them in. I liked Ashley's suggestion around, everyone does like the built-in look, but, it limits your options. But, maybe you do put blocking in all of your conference rooms, even though you don't know if you're going to use the video conferencing or the monitor in every room, but it's hard to put the blocking in after the fact. Like you said, you can't have enough power, data, in certain cities, for example, like Chicago, where everything has to be in conduit, you really have to think ahead. If you think you're going to need data somewhere, you got to put that conduit in ahead of time, or it's going to be really expensive and costly. Power, data, blocking, and telling the client, like, if you don't know exactly what you're going to pick yet, but you want something in that family, then we can start to design for it. And then you can pick your product afterwards and kind of plug it in, but it will affect your furniture choice. It could affect the layout of the room. So, there's a lot of things you have to take into account.
Right. And one of the things we work with our clients on is, even if they don't know what they want, we'll sit down with them and say, let's talk about what you think it looks like. Right. And let's kind of lay out, if you were going to grow from the Volkswagen to the Mercedes, how would we progress along those lines? Don't pick product, pick functionality, and tell me how you're going to move your employee workforce into these technologies. So we may not know exactly what they're deploying, but they know what they're wanting to do directionally, and which is always helpful. Ashley, you have any additional comments on that?
I would just say that power, you can't overstate the power, right? And there's a lot of really great, well-designed solutions out there, both furniture, architectural, that can help solve some of those problems. But if you build a meeting space or any kind of hybrid space and you don't fully outfit it with power, you might as well not bother, right? It's just not a good use of dollars, because with all our devices now, it's so important. And then to your point, Rick, about different thinking about what you want it to look like. We're doing more, we're working with more clients and doing more space planning. So instead of saying, right, we're going to end up, this is the end all be all of the furniture layout, this is open team, this is workstation, this is conference. We're saying, well, this is one way it could look. What if people come back and want to use it differently? So going, having plan A, plan B, plan C, this is how the space could be reconfigured, not waiting until you need to reconfigure it and then go like, oh, well, if we want to turn the setting this way, it doesn't work anymore. So really doing those space plans sort of up front and having more than one option that you're planning for in the future is really helpful.
You froze up there,
The other thing just is a lot of time with like what I'm going to call the line of business leaders, because you want to talk to not just like the HR or the corporate real estate, but you really want the leaders that are leading the different various business units, because their brains are probably way ahead and they know what technologies they're going to be wanting their teams to have. And they're going to know what kind of monitors they need and what type of collaboration tools and huge interactive whiteboards. So sometimes it's making sure you have the right people at the table so that you're really talking to people that have the vision of where they're taking their business, 2-3 years from now, that maybe it hasn't gotten to the corporate real estate group yet.
So let's dig on this just a little bit more, right?
Goals,
So yeah, exactly. So let's dive in just a little bit more, because it actually is one of the questions we had, which is what has been your experience to engage those employees more so in that planning strategy, a focus group kind of approach, getting more dynamically involved, because things will be dynamic moving forward. What practices have you guys done? Ashley, I'll start with you in that space.
Yeah, I think focus groups are critically important, right? And the point is not to tell employees this is a fully democratic process. People sometimes get the wrong impression when we say we're going to go talk to your employees. They kind of freeze up a little bit. It's not a democracy. It's not that everyone gets an equal vote, but it's about getting feedback, taking that feedback and seeing how that matches up with those organizational goals from senior leadership, right? What type of furniture setting do you use? It's fascinating what you hear from people, right? We love those sofas. They look very cool, but nobody ever uses them because that's not how we work. Or this room is just too big. We're always using it for 4 people. And so that's something that the senior leaders probably don't know, right? And so to get that feedback and then again, go back and bring that together with those larger organizational goals. So like down to the very tactical level and really making sure that the tactical and the very strategic high level are coming together is just so important. And focus groups are great for that.
Yeah, that's great. Tracy, how about you? What's been your experience?
So we do, as part of the workplace strategy that we typically do with the client before design. So there's a lot of focus groups, as Ashley mentioned, we do a lot of surveys, but there's a couple of things we found, and some of this is from my past life. Be very cautious or thoughtful about who you put in a focus group, because a lot of times if you put the partner with the associates and the senior associates, literally we're only going to hear from the partner and the associates are like too petrified to speak up. So you want to really, choose your focus groups with thought, because you do really want to get what they're going to say. But then also you just want to make sure you have leadership's buy-in before you do the survey, before you do the focus group, that when they come back and we see what they really want, that you're going to support it. So some cases we'll kind of work with leadership ahead of time to kind of put some guideposts up. So for example, if we give them 4 ideas of what would be possible, leadership's already open to those 4 ideas. So we might guide it a little bit just so there's some guideposts. But I think leadership buy-in, that they're going to honor and respect all the results that we come back to them with, so that when the space is built and the teams see that they were listened to and some of their ideas were incorporated, that I think is a huge impact to the the employees of the office.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'll add one specific piece in there that both of you are familiar with, because we've done it in the past. It used to be called the capabilities review, and it's really the technology integration review. And it's one of the things that we do with our clients. It's one of the things we do with our clients, where the technology team, at least in my experience, led a meeting with the architect, the MEP, the office leadership, security, maybe the furniture design. And we did what I at the time I called a virtual. I have to just pick another word because virtual means something different now. We walked through every square foot of the floor plans but it wasn't to say, and this goes here, and this goes here, and this goes here. That was what we wanted to get out of it. But we were walking through it, asking them each lines of service, each leader, each office, each market, how do your people work? Where do they sit? How do they congregate? Do they interact individually? And do they work individually, or do they interact as a team? And so the technology needs to meet the need of the workforce. You don't know that until you understand the workforce. And so I think I agree totally. One, you said earlier, and you know, I agree with this, is like we start early on this stuff, but it's also making sure we're not looking at just the solutions from a product perspective. We're looking at the solutions from a productivity perspective. And that means we have to understand how that office functions and how they get their work done and how they interact. So I think those are great things you guys are doing. And I think it's going to have to be key to incorporating all of these things, not just hybrid, but just the evolving, maturing workplace that we're going to be seeing moving into the future. We have about 10 minutes left here, and I want to open it up for questions. I've gotten one question. Tracy has a question or a comment.
Just real quick, like I know we would walk around the space sometimes with people and they see a big monitor and they just assume that it does cable TV, that it can be a video monitor, that it can do broadcasting town halls across all the other offices in the US. So the capabilities part is so key, because they need to understand what devices are going to be in the room and what those devices are capable of. And very often after the fact, they're like, oh, we thought everything was going to have cable. Well, but we never really talked about everything having cable. And just because it's on the wall and it's a monitor doesn't mean it's cable ready. So yeah. I just think I thought about the capabilities, and that's a huge, you should do that with every project before you finalize everything. Make sure everyone understands what technology they're going to have in every room.
Yeah, again, preaching to the choir here. I totally agree.
I know.
Hey, we do have a couple of questions. I'm going to just ask them, and either one of you, whoever wants to jump in here. The one that just came in is, what resources do you use? And he's asking all of us to stay on top of, like, what's the newest thing, and what does it look like, and is it real? How do you stay on top of the new in your industry? Either one of you.
Well, I would say from a technology perspective, because we really rely on subject matter experts like yourself, Rick, and like our integrators, and we try to the point earlier, to engage with them up front, and instead of being so prescriptive and saying, tell us what's in these 4 rooms, to have them tell us what are the things we're missing, right? I think we all go into these projects with sort of preconceived ideas about the screen on the wall, the thing on the table, but it's changing so quickly that you really should start out by asking, what do we not know, right? Mm-hmm. What are you seeing out there that's different and cutting edge? And that's, we get so task focused in these project meetings, right? And I think it's important at the very beginning to step back and ask those subject matter experts, what are you really seeing out there in the marketplace that we might not know about?
Yeah. Trace, how about you?
Yeah.
I have an interesting answer to this, by the way.
Okay. I mean, I'm with Ashley. Like, you need the subject matter experts. Either your client a lot of time has their own IT AV team. Sometimes they ask for a recommendation. So we have several partners that we use, around the globe. But it's also having, regular conversations with those partners. So like, what is coming, what is the new thing, so that we can start to make sure our design team is aware of what's out there, so we can talk to clients about it. But I will say, like, you have to do a lot of reading. It's a lot of work to try to stay on top of all the evolving technologies.
Yeah, you really do. I actually have an interesting answer, and sometimes I'm a little embarrassed to say it, but it's what I do, because the role I play is to integrate technology and workspace. That's what I'm paid to do. So I have to understand both of those. But the technology, one of the ways I stay up on technology is I talk to my kids and my grandkids, and I see what they're playing with. Because the toys they're playing with will move into the workplace. And the perfect example is, remember the Pokemon game where I hold my phone up and I can see one at the stop sign? Yeah. That virtual, I'm going to catch as many as I can as mom drives me to school. That technology is now driving 3-dimensional or virtual reality architectural design drawings where I can hold up my iPad, walk around an unconstructed space, and see this completed space through my iPad. So those technologies that we see and kind of laugh about and think are cute, they're moving to a commercial environment at some point in time. Another thing I do is I'm a YouTube vortex lost guy. I get in that stuff, but I'm looking for the crazy. I'm looking for the things that like people are going to roll their eye, because those are the things where today's technology came out of. That stuff that everyone goes, you'll never be able to do this. By the way, I openly say with somewhat of embarrassment and pride, but when they were pulling the cable TV lines down the street, I looked at it and said, cable TV, it'll never work. No one's paying for TV. So I kind of had to change my mindset. And I'm so open to anything I might see with regard to robots and drones and whatever it might be, because there's a commercial application somewhere in that for efficiency and productivity. Got another question here. It says, any guidance on cost estimates for some of these tech packages? Yeah, get the technology guy in first early and talk a lot. It really is a fair question, but it's like, it would be like asking me, how much would it cost you to build me a car? Well, what do you need? You know, do you need an electric car? Do you need a big car? Do you need a caravan? What do you need? And so the cost factor is really, it's dependent upon the requirement. And when the requirement is based on the work environment and where the company's going from a strategic place and a growth perspective. So the cost, I will say this about cost. We're seeing costs come down around the more common technologies. And to my delight, complexity is coming down as well. Things that we would spend $10,000 on 5 years ago, we might be spending $1,500 or $2,200 on today. So it's a fair question, but it is a challenging question to answer generically. And I don't know, can you guys respond to that from the overall design space perspective? We got a few minutes left here and open it up from just workspace.
I mean, that's why you have to have your IT AV person there from the beginning. And I mean, say at the end of SDs, when you should start to map out what all your technology is, and you should ask them for a budget. You don't want to be way down the line and then you kind of do a budget and you're blown out of the water and then you're having to go backwards. So progressive budgeting along the way and keeping the client informed as to what everything's going to cost. And, you know, as you guys mentioned, maybe have some day two money. So we can't do everything now, but we can future-proof it, have some money for later, but, you know, budgeting early, often.
Right.
And
Ashley,
I
how about
would
you?
say, yeah, I'd say also including, again, just back to the users, right? So we've been helping a lot of clients figure out what workplace experience software to use, what hoteling software, right? And so taking some of those folks in the office who are interested in participating in focus group, really getting them in and letting them kick the tires, maybe setting it up in one room and trying it, because if they don't like it and they're not going to use it and they know their colleagues aren't going to use it, it doesn't matter how cheap or expensive it is, again, right? So really getting those people involved and trying some things and then benchmarking and say, okay, maybe we want to scale up to 10 of these, or we start with 5, build the infrastructure for 10. But I just keep coming back to that user experience, and it is tied into budget, so you don't install something that doesn't get any use, right?
Right.
It costs a lot of money, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I would add to that before we close this up, wrap this up, is that you know, it's just it goes back to having a plan, a perspective, an approach. So if you don't know what a small conference room, a collaborative space, a large conference room function needs to be, then you have no idea what cost is going to be, and anyone can tell you this is what you need. And so sitting down and determining, how are we going to use this space? What functionality do we need to be as productive as possible? Then you start looking into what are these costs based on the solutions in that area. Listen, Ashley, Tracy, I am so grateful you guys were able to join me. I hope we can do this again sometime. Cerise, we had just a wonderful time. We had one question we didn't get to, but I'll address that afterward. It was really kind of directed at me. But I want to hand that back to you, Cerise, and say thank you so much for the opportunity. Again, Trace, Ash, thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Cerise. Or well, I know we're at the top of the hour.
Maybe we get to close it out, right?
Maybe we do, yeah. And so thanks for joining us today. We really do appreciate you joining. I know this is the topic that's going to continue to go in depth and breadth for quite a while, and we're all going to learn as we do that. So I obviously would love the opportunity to continue the discussion, maybe in a broader, longer sense. Cerise just said her audio is not working, so I'll just wrap this up. And so if you have any questions for the areas that we're in or just across the board, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us or all of us with additional questions, or to even find out more about how we can help in the space that you're in, either with clients or your own occupants. But again, thanks again for being here. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and an amazing weekend. Thank you, and happy fall, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Ashley. Bye, Rick. See ya.
Thank you.